but I think we need to take a step back and have a wraps discussion, and then wraps in WordPress piggyback off of that. So, yeah, so wraps. For those of you that do not know, wraps are basically, in the simplest terms, they are URLs from Methode that have markup that we then use on vendor sites, whether that's WordPress or Arcadium or vendor X, Y, or Z. Basically, they will either ingest the code from the URL and repurpose it on their own, or they will take the code and put their stuff into it, or they will take the code and pick out itty-bitty little pieces of it and then use just those pieces. WordPress uses just pieces of the wrap. It doesn't use the entire thing, and that varies based on vendor and the weather. Who knows? But basically, there's this document type in Swing called wrap that you can create by going to New Story, choosing wherever you want, and it's under Special Contents, and then wrap. I'm not actually going to do that right now because I already have one up that was created for WordPress. So we're going to talk about this. If you do go to that step, you will notice that there are about a gazillion empty code blocks here that can't be removed and are not used in any way. Ignore those. They are ghost blocks from somewhere further upstream that I have no control over.
You have a defect there.
Yeah, there's a defect for it. So if this were a brand new one, you would not see any of these that have the little blue title down here at the bottom. Those are actual override blocks that have been added to this wrap. The way that you find those and can get to them, so by default, when you open a new document, you'll be on the candidate browser, click on the object panel, and you'll have publishing, SEO, and wrap. All of the special wrap-tastic stuff is under the wrap header. Ignore mobile version because the site, as most of you should know by now, is responsive. We don't have separate mobile or desktop, but radio does. That's why it exists. The key and most necessary bit of information for a wrap is this source URL. Essentially, it is the URL. The ghost just entered the room. It is a URL published on the site that the wrap is based off of. So this could be the URL to a section page, it could be the URL to a story page, it could be the URL to anything that you want that is published. The best document to base your wraps on are flat pages. And the reason for that is it's the simplest layout. It has a main column and a right rail. It doesn't have a bunch of other special stuff on it. And it has all of the necessary components that vendors will likely need for their pages. You'll notice in this case, I have a source URL that says flat page for wraps. That is this one right here, flat page for wraps. It is a flat page document type, and it's actually, I have under the publishing, you'll notice that I have 8 sites that it's published to. The reason being, I'm using this one flat page for every site's wrap because it's just easier that way.
But instead of, sorry, we got into alternate URL, but instead of that, could you have used the full URL?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
For source URL?
Yeah, for source URL, it can be an alternate URL like this, which I created because remembering flat page for wraps is a lot easier than document / flat page / random ID. And you can define those alternates under publishing when you choose a site. You can define an alternate URL, you enter whatever you want it to be, and done. And it's easy. So that's what I did. You'll notice that this is that flat page output. It is completely empty because it has no content. I left it empty because it's just for a wrap. We don't need to pass any content over to the site. It's really, wraps are basically just frameworks for header, footer, which is empty on dev, and potentially the right rail if they use it or not. So this is the flat page output. This is the wrap output. It looks remarkably similar because it is identical. What happens when you define a source URL, what you'll do is you'll put in a URL, you'll hit refresh list, and what that does is it essentially, in the back end, it goes out and scrapes the source URL. So it goes out to this page, grabs the HTML from it, and creates it for use as the wrap. You'll notice in this dropdown, wrap components, it defines, or it doesn't define, it reflects every override block that has been defined in code. So in the templates, in various templates across the code base, we have HTML comments that say begin blah underscore override space block end comment. And so from that begin block to the end block is a subset of code that can be overridden in the wrap output. So if you look over here, metrics complete override means that we are choosing to override everything inside of the begin metrics override block and end metrics override block with this custom stuff that we've put in place. When you insert a wrap component, so we would choose, say, head settings override and click insert. What that does is it creates a new block down here with the aptly named head settings override. If you leave it completely empty, it will remove all of the default code inside the template between those two comments. If you put in something else here, like Dave's head settings, then what happens is it will place this text, or whatever you put in there, in place of the code that was between the begin comment and the end comment. If you put in, this is kind of a little special thing, and it's a carryover from medley functionality. If you put in block.super inside of these curly braces, and notice that there is no spacing in here, if you had it like, whoops, like that, it would print this exact string. So it has to be written with no spaces inside. What that would do is essentially take all of the default content inside of the begin comment and end comment and include that in the output. So doing this is essentially the same thing as not even having this block override in place in the wrap. The reason you might want that is, say, we don't want to completely obliterate the settings that exist, we just want to add to it. So we could do, and this isn't semantic markup, so ignore it, but, right? So we could do that. We could say, inherit, we want to keep all of the default settings, but we also want to add either our own, or maybe we want to add our own and we want to override a different setting, and I can't type. Right? So in this case, override.setting could be already defined in the default code, but we want to change its value in the wrap. So you can do that that way. The way that this works, if you have your custom code after the block super, it will come in that order in the output. It'll have all the default code and then yours. If we were to invert this and do like that, then it would be the same way. It would be, our custom code would be in the wrap output, followed by the default content. So if you were doing an override setting in this way, it would fail because the default code would come afterwards and your override would be invalidated.
This picture here makes Jennifer White very happy. Because she was like, oh, I don't want to override all of the metrics. I just want to kind of append to it and override a few blocks. And once you found out that we have to, yes, we're good to go with that.
And you'll notice there is this metrics complete override that is in place, and that has just this case. It has block.super, so it inherits all of the metrics. So just real quick aside, there are a bunch of different metrics override blocks. Metrics is a common component. So I didn't actually create all these overrides. They come from the common core metrics component. And so honestly, I don't know exactly which pieces these override. So proceed with caution. But generally, metrics complete is the way to do it if you want to inherit everything as it should be or is on the site, but just want to override some certain things. And so that's what we've done here. And this additional code came straight from Medley, so it may not even be valid right now. I don't know. We'll have to ask Jen when she looks at it. Otherwise,
And a good example would be the, like, instead of sending section, right, as the type, you send something else, right?
Right. So yes, a good example here would be, if you notice, our source URL, the flat page output, has the title flat page for wraps. Our wrap URL, wrap output, has the title flat page for wraps because it inherited that title from the source, which is the flat page. Most likely, metrics would not want to have the title be flat page for apps if it's on an Arcadium games sub website, whatever.
If you fill out the SEO field on the page title on the
here?
actual flat page, so that would override it. But again, since you're using the same one, it would be an issue.
And this isn't the flat page, this is the...
This is the wrap.
On the flat page.
Oh yeah, you could define it in either place. It would carry through. So if we were to override it on here, it would be reflected here and here. Theoretically, because I haven't done this yet, so it's always fun to do things live. I did. I don't know if there's any latency or not. And honestly, I don't know if it may not even reflect or respect the SEO in the wrap itself. I haven't looked that far into the code. So what I would have expected is for this title to change based on what I put in here. It appears that may not be the case. But we could look at making it do so if we want to. Or we could just override it on the flat page. But yeah. But you could also do it here if you just care about metrics and not what's actually displayed. In most cases, it wouldn't be an issue because the vendor will take the output of this page and then modify it to their own uses. So it's not like you would have the games page load with that page for apps in the title bar, but that is something that could potentially happen like this. So if we look at the overrides that exist on this page, on this wrap rather, we have 4 of them. Metrics, which we talked about, footer, which is overridden with this HTML comment, meaning that this comment will be the only content in the output in between the begin footer override block and end footer override block. So the actual footer should not display on the page. Ads override, which is empty, but that just means it'll blank out everything inside the begin ads override block and the end ads override block. And then tabula. In general, this will not always be the case, and in some cases, tabula won't even work on the partner site, depending on what the URL is. But generally speaking, the blocks that will almost universally be overridden are tabula, and then probably metrics via the inheritance model that we've done here. Otherwise, header, nav auth, probably breaking news too. WordPress, you probably want to override that.
What about right rail?
So right rail would be overridden if the partner site did not want to use the right rail. Honestly, for WordPress, we could override it, but that's actually a really good segue, Rob, into how WordPress uses wraps. So you'll notice that we have ads, which I'm going to remove this one because I want ads to actually work on the site, but I won't publish it yet, just so you can see. So we're not overriding the right rail, and so looking at the output of the page, you still have the right rail over here. But if we look at the dev blog, which is what this is, this WordPress blog is using the output from this URL. So it's using Wrapped WordPress to pull the header and the footer, which is not showing up because it's overridden. Right. And what's that? Yeah, and it's pulling from dev. So it's set up to pull from this exact URL right here. So if we were to, okay, so it had ads overridden previously. WordPress is unique in terms of ads because we don't want the ads to be defined in the wrap, or rather we don't use the ads that are defined in the wrap. They are defined in the WordPress theme itself. So all of the ad slots exist in a theme file. But we still need the ads, the underlying ads logic, so the reference to Harmony and the reference to the Google DFP tag. And so that's why we don't really want to override the ad block, because with that ad block overridden, we don't get any of those support references. That's why, if we look at this page, we currently have no ads, because those support references are overridden completely. So what we'll do is we'll kill that block, we'll save, we will publish. Again, we're publishing because I'm not referencing the wrap from preview dev, I'm referencing it from dev itself. So we don't really see a difference here because there aren't any ads in that, but we should, depending on caching, get ads loading here any minute. Yeah.
So got the override for all of everything for the right rail. However, if you use the flat page template that was just header and footer only, would you have to go through all that?
No. Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, good question. So when you specify a URL and you hit refresh list, what it does is it will populate this dropdown based on the blocks that are defined on that source URL. And so in this case, because it's a flat page that has a header, footer, right rail template, we get the flat page content, which is the main content column, and the right rail. If this flat page were instead, if its layout were just the header footer, then when we did, and actually, let's see if I can do that while we're doing this. So header footer only, save, publish.
This has to be published.
Yes, the source URL has to be published for the wrap to reference it. That's just a limitation of wraps in general in Methode. It can only reference published URLs. And so if I had not published that just then, and we had loaded, didn't I just do that? What did I do? I didn't put it on it, right? Okay. How do you do it?
Save another one?
Yeah, but that's good. It was right at that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Great publishing.
let's try that.
You did.
Well, when I hit save,
have.
it flips it back.
Weird.
And I'll just do it again too.
Hmm.
Again, the joys of live demos. Sorry, guys. So I had changed the layout to header and footer only, but when I save metadata, it works.
So somebody just did work on that. Can you find that?
Okay. Oh, it looks like it took, even though it reverted in the thing. So now on this flat page for apps URL, we don't have a right rail anymore. And if we were to come over here and do refresh list, you'll see that flat page right rail override is no longer in there because that that override block no longer exists in the source URL. or on the source code. So if this were a story page, if we were referencing a story page instead of a flat page, you would get additional override block options here, like the story page right rail and the story page main content. The section page would also have respective differences potentially. So yeah, so let's remove the footer override as well. We will save, we will publish. Come over here, and honestly the page is too short. I can't even validate that the footer is there. But I come over here, we should be able to, hey, look at that. We now have ads loading because those resources are in place in the wrap output. And even though the footer is empty on dev, it is showing up as we scroll down the page. So the footer is no longer overridden.
I have to push over the ad seller. It's not always a publish that.
There you go.
That
would be it. Thanks, Rob.
This footer had been displayed as of yesterday.
Yeah, I had it.
No,
So yesterday I had the setting, the wrap setting, pulling from previewed out, but that's when these icon fonts were broken. They were just the empty squares. And so to fix that, I changed it to dev and cascading issues.
Yeah, Salvatore and they're looking at it. SEC on that.
So for WordPress, again, WordPress is kind of a hybrid. You have three basic uses of wraps. You can have a wrap, and let me see as I'm talking if I can find the oh boy, I have to search. Sorry guys. Let's see. Wrap. That wasn't too painful after all. So for some vendors like YouPick'em, what they do is they look for a placeholder, and they know that they should inject their code into that place. So they take the wrap output, use it exactly as is, and just insert their stuff into a placeholder. You'll see that in this case, we are using their defined keyword of YouPick'em inside curly brackets. And that's in the flat page content override. So basically, meaning when they pull this URL, which I think is just wrap YouPick'em, because I tried to use consistent names, yeah. So when they pull this URL, they will get all this output, but they'll just know that, okay, let's put our code in the, basically the container for this string.
Did they get a footer too?
The footer will automatically show it, it's just not permanent. It shows up as you scroll down the page. Yeah. So YouPick'em is that, so that's one form where you define a placeholder and they know to put their stuff in there. Another one is, and let's see if I can find it just as quickly, Arcadium is unique also in that you actually override content blocks with specified content for them. So if we scroll all the way down the page again, you'll see that this top ad override. So real quick, this wrap is based on not the flat page, it's based on a story URL. And I think I did that just for kicks, I don't know. But basically, because it's based on a story, we have, like I was saying, we have additional overrides done here, which are different than the flat page. One of those is the top ad, which is HPO1 or MP00 block. Arcadium, they have their own ad configuration that replaces ours. So in this case, we are overriding the default HPO1 MP00 block with a block that contains their Arcadium specific content. I thought there was another one. Yeah. So it's the same thing. Story right rail has, again, an Arcadium ad placeholder. And story content has this Arcadium div that they know to look for, really a call to their custom code, I guess. So that when this wrap, what they'll do is they'll grab the output for this wrap URL, and they will, let me see if I can load that. Oh yeah, that's using it. And they will use it pretty much as is. And what happens is because we have defined those add calls, and oh, hey, how about that? Oh, I didn't publish it. When they implement that code on their side, oh, you know what? Sorry. Instead of them having to inject anything, it'll just run, and those arc colon tags will be replaced with their functionality. So in this case, they'll just take the wrap output and use it exactly as is. And you don't see anything because arc tags aren't generally known as a universal language, so they just use nothing. And then you have a hybrid approach, which is what WordPress is, where we take the wrap output and we look for different pieces. So for WordPress, for here, we specifically look for just, and I'm pointing, thinking that you can't see. We specifically grab only the header portion, and we take that substring of code and include it in the WordPress output. And then we look for the specific footer piece of code, and we pull that out and we put it where we want it. But everything else, and honestly the entire page, is generated by WordPress code. And so it's all WordPress output. We're just pulling different pieces of the wrap and including it in there, whereas some vendors may take the entire WordPress output or wrap output and put their stuff into it and serve it that way.
So is everything in the header? Like our metrics code and stuff like that?
Yes. So in this case, it does. And you can't. That's hard to see because it's not really visible. The metrics stuff isn't on the page. But yeah, we pull in the default metrics definition, and then actually let me see if I can maybe in source code. It's down near the bottom. Let's just put it down there. Adds. So these are all of the add definitions in WordPress. So that's where the slots are defined there. Okay, so here we go. So these are some WordPress specific overrides for metrics. So we take all the default stuff and include that in the output from WordPress. And then we also override some of those here. Instead of overriding it in the wrap output, we override it on the theme level because we want specific information from WordPress, like the title of the blog. And if this were a post page, it would have the ID of the post. Stuff that we don't have information about from the code.
Gotcha. That's what I was thinking of before, where it says blog there, but so you do it here in the header.
Yeah.
Because it's not output from the code.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
What about generating?
So generating for WordPress is unique. By default, generating will be included in the wraps unless you override that settings block I showed you. Okay. By default, generating stuff will carry through from Methode in the wrap to the partner site. So it'll exist there if they want to use it for authentication or whatever else. And it'll have all the same authentication and content IDs, partner IDs, and all that stuff as the main site. WordPress is unique in that it uses the generating plugin, and so we don't actually pull any of those settings from the code. We ignore them and use the settings that are defined in the WordPress admin for that specific blog. So yeah, so that's the case for both generating and Live-Fire. So if you look at comments on a WordPress blog, is the comments in the Live-Fire credentials are defined in the blog and not in the wrap. So we ignore that stuff from the wrap.
So what do you do with that log in there? Do you have to override that piece to point to the generating?
No, the good thing is the functionality that this taps into, it really taps into universal generating logic. It's just that the credentials that it uses once you click login. So if we were to click it and try to log in, it would use the credentials defined in the blog versus what Wrap. But the actual functionality is mirrored and it carries through. 15%. Let's see. Any other questions? Peanut Gallery, you're welcome to speak up also.
How are we rolling this out?
So have the wraps been created in beta for the vendors?
I did start to. The problem we ran into when I did that during the storm last week. Problem is not all of our code was in beta yet, and so I didn't have exposure to all the block overrides. So what I've done is I've created wraps for each of UPick and Arcadium and WordPress on dev right now, and pass those off to vendors so that they can go ahead and implement in their staging. We'll have more immediate. So if there's something that needs to change in the code on our end, we'll be able to see it and make the thing work quickly. And then once that's confirmed, then we can carry it through and create an improv. Yeah. Right.
You're staying.
Yeah, that's what you said. Decide we're not right.
Decide we are staying.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Really?
That was a good question. And then in terms of WordPress, because it's, the benefit to WordPress is that it's in our control on both ends of the wrap and the theme. And so for those, what we'll do is the theme can go out to VIP and be available ahead of time. And we'll just, once we're ready, the wraps will already exist, the theme will be there, we'll just essentially flip the switch on the individual blogs to use the new theme, and that'll use the new wrap.
How many blogs are you talking?
Lots. I mean, yeah, it's a bunch. For all 8 properties, that's probably on the order of triple digits.
Have we already put in, his WordPress thing, his WordPress approved?
No, not yet. We're waiting on testing to finalize, and then I'll. Yeah.
And then we'll also submit the description to
Yep.
you have that list.
I do not have that.
And just to clarify, will be a new theme, right?
Right. It's the through EPS.
It's a new theme though.
Well, so
It's not a
from
brand new
our
one.
perspective,
Right.
it's a new theme.
These
From
blogs already have.
VIP's perspective, it's CMG to EPS.
Maybe we'll have to, that day of launch, or whenever we decide we're staying live, someone will have to go in and modify all
Right.
their apps.
Yes. Yes. They will have to, they'll have to do 2 things. They'll have to, and this is kind of tricky, because you can't actually get to the settings for the theme without enabling the theme. So they'll have to enable the theme and then quickly specify the wrap URL to put up that. But maintaining that control on our end, instead of saying, hey, VIP, can you enable this for everybody? At least we can do that immediately. Say, okay, enable it now, and then change the wrap. And we can do it on a blog-by-blog basis. And good job, Veronica. You are very smart. Anything else? If not, I'm done talking. So.
Good demo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I agree. Like, I remember the first time I went in, I think I was only here a week, and I was in a meeting about wraps. It was so lost. They started talking about block overrides, and I was just like, almost shutting down mentally. I was really trying to learn too.
Dave, this is right. You explained it to me 18 million times, and I still can't answer a basic question from Sarah. So, we're sorry for putting you on the spot, but this is very helpful.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so I feel comfortable enough now to until everything's over. So you guys keep talking about theme. What are we referring to?
So theme is it's code for WordPress.
Okay, so WordPress only wraps.
Nope.
So it's not the whole thing that like radio uses.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Thank you for asking that, Judy.
Slides. Oh, good. The theme besides that, it's like when you've got same blog post. So it's WordPress blog post.
Yeah.
Can you guys repeat what you were saying? I couldn't hear the answer.
It is basically theme in this sense is WordPress nomenclature for code. It is the code that controls the look and feel and behavior of the WordPress site.
I like the simplicity that Sarah just gave it in. Is WordPress blog post templates. It's theme is code that
Yeah, it kind of is. That's how I kind of think of it too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the template for the blog. Yeah. The unique thing about it is that the theme can be used on multiple blogs, which is what we do currently. So if you think of all the JP2 blogs, so Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta Braves, et cetera, all of those blogs use the same code, the same theme, the same template. So that's why we can't really put anything site or blog specific into the theme, because that would be then carried over to every single blog that uses it, and it may not apply to every single blog that uses it. So that's why we have things like, well, looking at the source code isn't very helpful in this case, but that's why when we do things like this, Prop 41 override, Atlanta Braves, it's in the WordPress code, it's not saying Atlanta Braves, it's saying title of this blog. So we don't put anything.
Can you log into the WordPress real quick and just show us
Yeah.
the theme?
Sure.
The other options that you use.
That
And the URL for
how different than the great sites.
Mhm.
So it looks different.
Okay, so this is the WordPress admin. Yay. All of the themes exist in this appearance menu, and you'll see that this is my dev server, so it has a whole lot of crap in it. That's my lovely screenshot. You'd be proud of me, huh?
Nice.
Pretty
That's
awesome.
a great.
It's not really a screenshot. I created it in Photoshop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
RPG?
No, it's only
Very high
PNG.
quality.
Anyway, it shows that is the currently active theme. These are all of the available themes. So we have the JP0 theme. We have JP0 Mobile. We have JP2. We have JP2 EPS. We have JP2 Mobile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, or yeah, default WordPress themes 2011, which is,
That's so 2011.
yeah, 2011. Shiny wheels. We don't have those anymore. So basically, any theme that has been added to and is made available to a blog will show up in this appearance menu. So when Sarah mentioned asking VIP to make the new theme, quote-unquote new theme, available to all of the blogs, that means that it won't be the active one, but it will show up in this list of themes. So that when we want to, we can come in here and say, you know what, we're ready to launch, let's activate it. And so if I do, so I just activated CMG2, which is the default JP2 theme. So if we reload this page, and because of what you see, it doesn't look all that different, but trust me when I say it's a completely different code. Yeah, well here, let's do this. I'll go to JP0. That'll really help.
Yeah.
Okay? Let the drums commence. Hey, look at that.
Beautiful.
Totally different, right? So the idea is that just by changing the theme or the templates that are used by the site, you change not the content. So all of the content is the same. So JP Ledbetter or J Ledbetter feature test, Facebook embed test, blah blah blah. Even the name of the blog, Atlanta Braves, is still the same. What changed is all the underlying code behind it. So if we come back and activate this one again and reload, you have all the same content, right? Blog name, all the same posts and everything, but it's displayed in an entirely different way because all of the back-end code for WordPress has changed. So yeah, so when we talk about themes, that's what we're talking about. And then each theme can have its own set of custom, its own set of custom settings. Just real brief WordPress overview. All of this down to week starts on is plain Jane vanilla WordPress. That's in every single WordPress blog you might ever have the joy of administering. Site title, etc., etc., etc. But you can also define custom settings in each theme. So in this case, because this is the Methode theme, we have Methode Wrap URL. This is the URL to the wrap that we want to use. It looks very similar to, well, not Wrap Arcadium, but you know what I mean. It looks very similar to our wrap output because it is the same. You also define an embed host name. I won't go through every single one of these, but suffice to say, you have specific settings that can be unique to a theme that show up on the settings page. If I were to go back and flip it from this one to the whatever it was called, AJC Wired, whatever, the JP0 theme, you would not see breaking news alert. You would not see tax on or redirect the homepage. They would have a different set. You would actually have a wired wrap URL, and you would also have a mobile wrap URL because it used two different wraps. So all that to say, that's what we were talking about earlier when we said that it's launching a site or a blog for Methode would be a two-step process. Step one is going into the appearance menu and activating the new theme. Step two is coming to this settings page and then filling out all of these fields that are unique to that theme.
What will need to be changed other than the wrap URL?
So the wrap URL and the embed hostname are the two biggest ones.
Is the embed hostname changing though? It's still going to be abc.com.
It won't change, but because it's a new theme, it's a new setting. So you'll have to specify it, yeah.
What's it specified before?
Because it's new.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they didn't use it for EPS or anything like that?
As far as I know, EPS never went active on anything, and so none of those settings were pre-populated. The beauty of it is that WordPress saves these settings values in its database, and so once you activate a theme, even if you then switch to a different theme, it still saves those settings values for that theme. So if you were to switch, say we're not going to roll back, say we activated in the middle of the night the new Methode theme in order to set up the settings, but we didn't really want to stay live yet, we could go in, populate all the settings values, save it, then switch back to the original theme until we were ready to go live. And then all the settings would be pre-populated because once you switch it again, it looks in the database for those values. If it finds them, it has them.
Wrap URL, embed hostname, can you tell me exactly what the default would be image?
The default will be what comes through in the wrap. So if this doesn't have a value, it will use, if it exists, an OG image from the wrap.
Okay.
If this is defined, it just overrides that.
So you don't think we need to define that then?
Not necessarily.
The taxon we already defined?
Taxon is used for both ad targeting and metrics, so you will want to define that.
We define it.
Yeah.
And then anything else?
No, this redirect the homepage, and that's for EPS type stuff.
Yep.
I don't even know if we still do actually, I don't know what that ever was used for. Chuck may know because he's on, but we probably don't need to answer it right now. Taboola we'll probably want to enable. We have it everywhere. And then, like I said, breaking news is just for EPS, so that if we can't rely on the wrap or whatever, we can define it ourselves.
Okay. All right, I just want to make a note of the story that we want tasks.
While we're in here, I'll go ahead and show you modifier settings.
Have we modified add those on as well?
No,
Those are
because those are defined by the plugin. Those settings should already exist, and we'll just carry through as they are.
Can we add those settings prior to going live?
Yeah, they're already defined. Wait,
Not
which
those,
ones?
the other ones.
Oh, the theme settings? No, the theme has to be active in order to access.
You could add them, turn it on, turn it off.
Yeah,
And
that's
then have all of them set up and
Right.
just turn them all on.
that's what I was saying. You could potentially activate the theme in the middle of the night, some random time, populate all the settings, save it, and then flip it back so you're ready to live.
Yeah.
But without making the theme active, you can't populate the settings.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'd rather
Just do them one
have
by
one
one.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much time do you think we'll have once we go live? Because those URLs are 404, they're that URLs, so I guess we don't know how long it's happening.
Which ones? The Methode Wraps?
Yeah, for the Methode Wraps is requesting.
Can we freeze them? It's still not really up.
Shouldn't matter. Really, the issue for Methode Wraps is going to be the DNS change. Because once that happens, that API, whatever, endpoint doesn't exist anymore.
Are we switching the middle of the night?
No, we will launch them today.
So it's going to go out, it's going to 404 days. And we'll have, and it depends on how long it caches the last year, I guess. That'll be all window.
Yeah.
Switch over.
And it right now is set to cache for an hour, I think, in WordPress. For me, you'll notice that when I'm logged in, if I refresh, it picks up changes more quickly because, well, two reasons. One, if you're WordPress admin, it doesn't cache to the same level as anonymous users.
Okay.
And two, I think I have it set much shorter because it has developing.
Okay. So we got a plan for that one. I'll find it.
Yep. We like to use support tests, or tech support days.
None of us will be at one desk.
Any other questions?
Oh, awesome.
Alrighty. Thanks, Josh.
Is there anything else to go over?